Okay, let's dive right in. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack a truly mind-blowing story drawn straight from our source material. This is the story of Vivin, a 28-year-old software engineer living in Delhi. Now, on paper, Vivin totally had it all, a great job, a solid salary, good friends. But on the inside, he was completely trapped. He was caught in this miserable, endless loop of procrastination, bad habits, and constantly making excuses to himself. Every single time he promised to finally start working on his dream startup or quit smoking, he'd fail within a few weeks. He was stuck. And honestly, maybe you know exactly how that feels.
Everything came to a head at 3 a.m. on a freezing, stormy night in Delhi. The temperature had absolutely plummeted. We're talking that deep cold that just chills your bones. Vivin woke up, blindly reached over for his pack of cigarettes, and found it empty. Moving like a robot on complete autopilot, he put on his shoes and walked out into the freezing, pouring rain for the sole purpose of buying a pack. And as he stood there shivering in the cold, this midnight realization struck him like a lightning bolt. If I can't even control this one habit, how will I ever control my life?
Which brings us to Section 1, the midnight realization.
That freezing wake-up call forced Vivin to confront the harsh reality of his situation. His addiction and his total lack of discipline were completely in the driver's seat of his life. He wasn't in control at all. His familiar habits were. Now, just a few days after that rainy night, there was a corporate restructuring at his office, and Vivin met his new manager, Rohan. But here's the crazy part. Rohan was actually an old college friend of his. And back in college, Rohan was a total mess. He was the guy constantly borrowing money, showing up in unironed shirts, and actually, he was the very person who got Vivin into smoking in the first place. But the guy standing in front of Vivin now, completely transformed. He was poised, fit, super confident, and speaking like a true leader. Vivin was just utterly shocked.
Vivin simply had to know how this happened. So they went out to a local tea stall, their old hangout spot, and Vivin offered Rohan a cigarette. Rohan calmly turned it down, saying he had quit. When Vivin, who was in total disbelief, asked how on earth he managed to break such deeply ingrained bad habits, especially when nicotine patches and sheer willpower had failed them both before, Rohan gave this brilliant, kind of enigmatic answer. He said, one day, an earthquake happened, and everything changed.
Let's unpack what that means in Section 2, the earthquake of quantum change.
Rohan was actually referring to a fascinating psychological phenomenon studied by Dr. William Miller called quantum change. It's defined as a sudden, profound shift in perspective or behavior. See, through years of studying addiction, Miller discovered that people don't always change through sheer, grinding willpower. Sometimes they change through a sudden, incredibly deep shift in meaning. To the outside world, it looks like it happened overnight, but internally, the groundwork for that change had been laying there for years.
So the crucial takeaway here is this earthquake analogy. Deep under the surface, tectonic plates of frustration, guilt, and anxiety are just constantly grinding against each other. Rohan didn't just wake up one random Tuesday and use a habit tracking app to quit smoking. He explained to Vivin that his father, who was also a heavy smoker, had recently suffered a fatal stroke. In that one tragic moment, the entire meaning of smoking shifted instantly for Rohan. It went from being a symbol of comfort and fitting in to a symbol of leaving his own mother all alone in the world. That was his mental earthquake. The desire for a cigarette was rewritten in an instant, all because the invisible pressure had finally cracked the surface.
But there's a catch, which leads us to Section 3, the cage of familiarity.
See, Rohan warned Vivin not to just sit around waiting for a tragedy to break his habits. He pointed out that Vivin was currently trapped inside an invisible cage, and he didn't even realize it. Vivin kept beating himself up, thinking he was just lazy or lacked discipline because he'd come home and binged Netflix instead of building his dream startup. But Rohan explained that it wasn't laziness at all. Vivin's brain was simply addicted to familiarity. His current job, making excuses, the smoking, all of that was safe, known territory. But the dream of a startup? That represented the great unknown. It represented the very real possibility of failure and social judgment. So his brain categorized his dream as a dangerous threat and locked him tight in a cage of safe, familiar misery.
And where exactly do these fears come from? Well, Rohan explained that the voices of safety all around us, parents telling us to get a stable job, society warning us against taking wild risks, they eventually morph into our own inner voice. Every single time Vivin chose the familiar over the unknown, he was reinforcing this safe player identity. He was quite literally cementing the bars of his own psychological cage with every safe, comfortable choice he made.
So how do we break out? Section 4, building your anti-vision. To shatter those cemented bars, Rohan guided Vivin through a really powerful and honestly pretty uncomfortable mental exercise right there at the tea stall. Now, we've all heard of positive visualization, right? Imagining the beach, the big bank account, the success. But Rohan introduced Vivin to the anti-vision. This is the intentional visualization of a highly painful, completely undesirable future that results directly from your current habits. The thing is, positive goals are often a bit too abstract, but associating deep, visceral pain with your current trajectory, that creates the ultimate dissatisfaction. And you absolutely need that intense dissatisfaction to force your brain into action.
So Rohan told Vivaan to close his eyes and imagine himself exactly 15 years in the future. He's 43 years old now. He's got higher expenses, way more responsibilities. He wakes up to the exact same alarm, commutes to the exact same job, and that startup folder on his laptop, it hasn't been opened in 15 years. And here's the absolute kicker. A bright-eyed 26-year-old kid comes up to 43-year-old Vivaan, super excited about a new startup idea. And Vivaan, who is now trapped completely, actually tells the kid to play it safe and just stick to the corporate job. Ouch.
Seeing his own potential wasted in this incredibly vivid, painful way absolutely disgusted Vivaan. He opened his eyes, visibly shaken. And guys, that is exactly the point. That exact pain became the fuel he desperately needed. Because for a quantum change to occur, staying the same must become significantly more painful than the effort required to actually change.
All right, let's get practical. Section 5, the 5-step formula.
This all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually apply it to our lives? Rohan didn't just leave Vivaan with a nightmare, he broke it down into an actionable framework. Step 1. Label the specific behavior you want to stop. For Vivaan, that was smoking and wasting his weekends. Step 2. Find the identity behind it. Vivaan realized he was playing the role of the safe player. Step 3. Build the anti-vision, which we just did, visualizing that miserable 43-year-old future. Step 4. Choose a new identity. Vivaan decided he wanted to be a calculated risk taker. And finally, step 5, find the crack. That 5th step is absolutely everything. Section 6, finding the crack.
Finding the crack is where the magic really happens. You see, you don't need to conjure up a massive storm or wait for a personal tragedy to break your cage. You just need to strike one tiny crack in the glass. 8 months. That is exactly how long Vivian's startup folder had sat completely untouched on his laptop's desktop, serving as this glaring, daily reminder of his own inaction.
Ron gave Vivian some very strict instructions. Do not try to be a hero. Do not try to rebuild your entire life overnight by quitting your job and registering a company tomorrow morning. Just strike the first crack. Take one small action today that the old, safe player version of you would avoid. So Vivian went home, and instead of binging Netflix, he simply double-clicked that folder that had been dormant for 8 months. He spent just a single hour brainstorming and writing down ideas. It seems tiny, right? But psychologically, he was giving his new risk-taker identity a tiny, undeniable piece of evidence that it was real. He proved to his brain, in that 1 hour, that he was now a doer, not just a dreamer.
And the results? Well, they speak for themselves. By consistently finding that one small crack every single day and accumulating that daily evidence, they've even shattered his cage of familiarity. 6 months later, he walked into Rohan's office and confidently handed in his resignation. He hadn't just naturally quit smoking without even promising it was his last cigarette. He had rebuilt his entire life and actually secured his first investor for his startup. He completely rewrote his destiny. Your life does not change by chance, and you definitely shouldn't wait for a tragedy to force an earthquake. It changes by choice. It changes by stacking up undeniable evidence of a brand new identity. So I want to leave you with this question as we wrap up. Take a hard look at your own life. What is the one small crack you are going to make tonight to finally break your cage?